Hello, good morning, good evening, whenever you see this. First of all, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your presence. I would hope that you engage with the video at some point, I don't know exactly how long this is gonna be, but I have something on my mind, so we're gonna talk about it for a little bit. Also, I almost always feel super awkward when I'm filming in public spaces. I'm obviously walking down the street, you know what I mean, in a residential area, and I looked over across the street. I was like, oh, there's people, there's humans. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about fame, I think, question mark. I feel so awkward, I feel so silly talking about stuff like this sometimes, but I do put myself out there. I do have a relatively notable, you know what I mean, public energy, you know what I mean? It's just, I think it's funny because I don't necessarily see myself that way. I don't necessarily think about it like that, but then it's the truth. I put myself out there. There's plenty of people who recognize me, who know who you know what I mean? And I definitely feel like the last few weeks, I've noticed a little bit of a shift. It's currently the 4th of January, so it's literally still the beginning of the year. But the last few weeks, the last month or so, I feel like I've definitely been noticing a shift. Especially because partially due to me being more consistent and super up, you know what I mean, live streaming and all that stuff. And I've definitely noticed a shift. And I don't consider myself to be super mega famous or anything, but once again, I've been streaming, I've been putting myself out there for at least 5 years at this point now, I think. I could be wrong about the number, but it's been a while. It's been a long while, you know? And because I'm naturally just an analytical person, sometimes I come back to the notion of what does it mean to be famous? What does it mean to be a public person? And so I've been thinking about that, and that's what I was thinking about. That's the purpose of this video, to just kind of talk about that and you know what I mean, move through that. And I don't know, if I could talk about public energy, one thing about it, before I even started posting myself, I was always kind of worried, low-key scared about how people might perceive me and interpret my energy. And it's something I've had to work through, something I've had to push through over the years, obviously. But as I continue putting myself out there, as I continue putting my work out there, I continue coming back to that. I continue thinking you know what I mean, what is this, what you know what I mean? Because specifically I've been working on different projects that I want to publish, that I want to release, and there's a part of me that's having imposter syndrome. That's kind of am I qualified to put this out? Am I qualified to be giving this to people, selling this to people? You know what I mean? And so that's something I've been kind of thinking about here and there. You know, I feel so awkward sometimes when I record in public. I just passed somebody and I always feel so weird. I always feel like I have to pause, you know, because nobody can see me do this, even though eventually this will get posted and people will see this. I don't know. I've talked about it before, and I'm definitely not going to say that it's inherently bad to desire fame, but I do think that it is something that we should be a little bit more critical of, because it is a trauma. It is something that really affects a person's journey quite majorly, you know what I mean? A lot of our favorite childhood stars, they had issues growing up because it is literally a trauma. It's traumatic to be on that sort of public arena, you know what I mean? Having to make mistakes, having to learn things, having to go through puberty, having to go through major life changes while people are staring at you and looking at you and critiquing you. It can be a lot, you know? And obviously, once again, like I said before, I'm not the most notable person. I'm not the most famous person yet, but I've been putting myself out there consistently for a few years now. And being an observant person, being a critical person, an analytical person, you know, I try to think a little bit about how I'm projecting myself and how I'm putting myself out there, you know? Because to some degree, I mean, with any public facing career, anything where you're working with the public, you have the ability to influence people and alter people's minds in a way. And obviously as a guy and as somebody who's literally, their position is to give people guidance and advice, even more so, obviously. but like generally as a public person, you have that responsibility. And I think if you want to genuinely be good at being a public figure, you have to think a little bit critically about how you're showing up and how you're projecting your energy towards others. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to, well, let me not say that. Like, I love helping people. I love connecting with people. I really do. But one thing about it, and I was talking about this yesterday on live stream, like, you have to fill your own cup. You have to be able to rejuvenate and, like, you know, give to yourself in the same way that you give to others. Because when I'm on live stream, when I'm like making videos, it's a very selfless sort of energy. It's a very other focused energy. You know what I mean? I'm constantly, you know what I mean, thinking about the other person, affirming the other person, supporting, motivating, encouraging the other person. And if I'm constantly doing that for other people, but I'm not doing that for myself, at some point I'm going to get burnt out. And I get burnt out anyway, because naturally when you're putting out energy, at some point you get tired. But like, the point is, another important part of it is you really do have to find out a ritual, some sort of, and before I recorded this video, I was going to talk about like spirituality. And I was going to say that I think it's so important to have some sort of spirituality if you're going to chase fame, if you're going to chase notoriety. And it's not even that it has to be spirituality per se, but like some sort of regulation thing, something that grounds you, something that brings you back down to earth, you know? Because being watched by so many people definitely influences you, definitely changes your chemistry a little bit. You know what I mean? It's a drug. Like, some people consider it like a drug to get on stage and perform. It gives you a rush. You know what I mean? So you kind of gotta have some sort of routine, have some sort of structure to bring yourself back down, so you're not constantly up in the stratosphere, constantly floating around. You know? And I only feel qualified to talk about this because, like I said before, I've been really consistent in my routine, in the way that I like, you know what I mean, in the way that I flow publicly. Like, specifically, not to get too personal, but one thing I've made it a point to do is, like, before every live stream, I make sure to take some time to set my intentions, to really get into stillness and, like, really, you know what I mean? And I would just say meditation, but it's not necessarily just meditation. I just take time to get into stillness, get into flow. And it's worked like a charm, honestly. Every single time, it's been really, really I'm doing this. It's been really groovy. And so, like, you don't have to have a routine like me, but I definitely think some sort of routine, some sort of pre-performance ritual is really important, you know? I've heard as if I'm a celebrity, I've heard celebrities talk about connecting with a higher power, and I definitely agree with that. I definitely resonate with that. Connecting with some sort of higher force, you know, understanding that as a performer, it's not just you, it's also, like, you know, the performers that came before you and all that jazz. Like, you don't have to agree with that, but that's the spirituality aspect of it, knowing that it's bigger than just you. You know, when you get on that stage, when you get in that booth, when you get into that whatever, it's bigger than just you, you know? Because, once again, like I said before, it's a very selfless energy to perform, to give somebody your creative energy. You know, you don't know who you're inspiring, you don't know what you're inspiring, you know what I mean? And that's not necessarily any of your business. You know, you're just doing your job as a performer, and then whatever happens afterwards is magic, you know what I mean? And so that's another thing I'll say. Also, excuse me for the burp, I'm going to say one last thing and then I'm going to end this video. Self-concept is so important. Like, the way that you see yourself, the story that you tell yourself is so important in how efficient you are able to be as a performer. You know what I mean? Like, I've met so many amazing people who have a terrible self-concept, and their life goes to shit because externally they might have all the stuff, they might have the money, they might have the friends and all that jazz, but they genuinely don't see themselves as something worth, you know what I mean? Like, and like, so you really got to be careful about that. Like, the stories that you tell yourself, like, you know, I'm not telling you that to be obsessed with yourself or to be like overly narcissistic or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But like, at the least, you should have a healthy concept of yourself. You should have a healthy understanding of, like, you're worthy of something. You know what I mean? And like, if you're going to be a performer, if you're going to project your energy onto others, ideally you want to project something that is pleasurable, pleasant. You know what I mean? You don't want to project, what is the word? I'm drawing a blank on so many different words. You don't want to project self-loathing, self-hatred. You know? So like, you really got to consider what's going on up here if you're gonna project that onto others, you know. And so I'm gonna end this here. I'm gonna say thank you for tuning in, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and big thanks to the Patreon members. Big thanks to anybody and everybody who's ever helped support me. I appreciate you. I hope you're doing wonderful, you know what I mean. And if you want to work with me, if you want to check out the link tree down below, there should be a link tree in the description. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Stay groovy. Bye.